Okay. Welcome to the Wednesday, October 2nd, 2013 meeting of the Finance Committee. If you have a cellular device, please put it in the off or mute position as to not disrupt the conduct of the meeting. Madam Clerk, a roll call if you please.
Present are David Hurd, Joan Fonts, Marilyn Jordan, Marilyn Donahue, Larry McDonald, Bonnie Catulli, and Tom Worthen. Absent is Dominic Camerano with one empty seat.
Thank you very much. Any citizens here for citizens participation?
Don't be shy.
Cue the sound of the chirping crickets. Okay. Town Administrator's report, please.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
That was a nice response. We have just a few items tonight. The first one is I want to update. I know we've done a quick report, but I don't think all the members had been here. When the state finally passed its budget after July, the cherry sheets were updated. And what it left us with was an increase overall, but I think it would be interesting for the committee to understand where the hits and the surpluses were. So from the total of the school aid, there was a reduction of $4,450. To town aid, there was an increase of $38,786. So from just the aid portion, the net increase was $34,336. Then we also have the county and state assessments. So that's, the county assessments, there's the teachers' retirement, there's the school choice sending, so the assessments, so basically what they're taking back. And the assessments were reduced by $43,917. So between the net increase in aid and reductions, the budget would have a surplus of $78,253. So that's a little bit of good news. We received the September disbursement for the meals tax and the hotel motel. Meals tax came in almost identically to what we had last year, $128,101. Our September disbursement in FY13 was $127,946, so a small difference. Where we had a large increase percentage-wise was in the local option rooms tax for the hotel motel. We received $19,541 this fiscal year. The previous fiscal year, we had received $15,166 for the September disbursements. The local option rooms tax historically has been very volatile. So in 2008 or fiscal 28, the September disbursement was close to 21,000. Fiscal 2009, a little over 16,000. Fiscal 2010, close to 16,000. Fiscal 2011, approximately 14,000. And fiscal 2012 was $23,000. So that one fluctuates, and I really, whether it's the visitors, whether it's certain hotel motels open or closed, we're hoping we will have a large fluctuation when the new hotel opens. So that would be a bit of good news. The next item that I have is in reading the reports.
Wait, hold on just a second.
How much is the hotel motel tax?
For the additional
1.5% or
percentage on there.
It's 0.75, I
That's the The meals tax is the
Meals tax.
0.75, and the hotel motel option, we just increased it to the maximum. And you all know it's a simple question that I should know off the top of my head, and I'm just flubbing on it. So
Well,
Okay.
spend an idea.
on the, I'll probably touch the computer machine before I leave and get you the number. So, were there any other questions on that?
I have one on the mills tax. You know, we had, I don't remember when exactly stashes came in, but I believe it was towards the end of July or July when it kicked in. And then we had the Cohog Republic, which was fairly new as well. Of course, we lost. I'm just trying to see, you know, that I would have expected a larger increase. But then again, you know, we lost, I don't know who we lost this year. So
I think if I remember, we lost a few, and we have to remember that there's some of the seasonal establishments, some new ones opened up, but all across town is where we get the meals tax. You even get it from the coffee stores, from Dunkin' Donuts and things such as that. So if you ever look at your tax and there's not the right amount, let the DOR know so they can collect
Okay.
it.
yes, we have Mr. Jordan.
I have a question. I know when you go and Stop and Shop, when you buy the pre-packaged meals, there's no meals tax on that. How come? Because they do that when you go into some of the other places and get a takeout meal, you pay meals tax. It's the same idea. But not in Stop and Shop.
Yeah, Department of Revenue guidelines on there when they created the tax. So they list, if you go onto the DOR website, and the simplest thing is just to Google DOR local option and make sure you put Massachusetts, or you'll pull up Texas and other places. It'll give you the whole guidelines of what legislator decided that wouldn't be included, those types of things. That was a decision that they made. So
I must check Market Basket. They do charge it. Market Basket charges it.
yeah.
Stop and Shop doesn't. If it's a
Yeah.
prepared meal, when you over, it's not at the deli, it's the prepared food. But
Okay.
I think Market Basket charges you for it.
Yeah, I would look, because if it's,
Stop
I
and
know
Shop.
that some of the, before it was the Subway and the gas station, they had the Food Mart in there, the Brown Bag Express, and that, of course, is charged because it's essentially a cafe. So most of them, I thought, charge. I don't know whether that's might be a good one to find out.
It's the only one in town. No, that's not it.
You may not be welcome in Stop and Shop.
Not anymore.
The news that looks like it's coming out of Boston is that they will not release the full amount of the Chapter 90 aid. So only approximately the 200 million, not the 300 million. What that means to Wareham is our 2014 apportionment was supposed to be $729,862.48. We will be reduced or will not receive $243,287,000. So only receive about $486,000. That's a big loss.
Is that they're just releasing it? That doesn't mean we're not going to get it later, or
They could release at the end of
Okay.
the fiscal year, but right now they're refusing to release it. In FY13, we had almost 732,000. So it's certainly a loss. So two small wins or two small good news, one big loss.
What are we gonna do about it?
You just do less projects.
I'm gonna have to start charging for the prepackaged meals at Stop and Shop to get some of that money back. I'm sorry. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly the municipalities, the MMA has been urging the governor to release the rest of that, and they just they're going to hold off on it. So what that means is, when speaking with Mr. Menard, we'll see what projects we can do and can't do this year. The Onset Avenue, if you remember what was done last year, cost almost $500,000. So to let you know how little that amount of money actually goes when you look into it. So that's.
Is this a good time to cover the government shutdown and how that affects us from the federal level?
Yeah, I said something last night that actually came out as insensitive because I said it doesn't really affect us, but it's affecting everyone. It's affecting people that are furloughed. We have residents and taxpayers that are probably feeling the pinch, or friends and family. Right now, for our aid and such, there's not an immediate impact. The debt ceiling would have an impact to some of our funding, public safety funding, the 911 grants, any of the federal grants will have a real issue, and potentially the community development block grants, so that we have from CETA, could have issues there as well. Right now, as to an immediate problem coming down to the local level, we won't see anything unless the federal government's not giving to the state government, and then they will withhold what their pass-through sort of is. But as of right now, there's been no sign of that. That's the. I know we'd given some of the we gave the expenditure report last week, so I don't know if there were any additional questions that anybody had. Okay.
You gave us, we have something in our file for the GASB 45. Were you going to do
Yes.
that as well?
Yeah, the GASB 45. That's if you look at it, there's essentially, to be blunt, there's two options. You're either pay as you go, which the town does and is approximately 95% of the communities across the nation, or you fully fund the liability. In order for us to fully fund and be, I'm starting to push all my dates together because I know our pension we have to be by 2034. So I think the GASB actuarial, I don't know, I think that one's in the next 20 years as well. But it would be approximately 1.96 million that we would have to fund every year going forward. We know that our liability is going to keep on increasing. I believe it's, I don't have the report, but if you look, I think it's about $82 million is our current unfunded liability. And it's going to increase exponentially on there. This town, as well as, again, 95% of the others, does not have the ability to come up with $2 million a year. You can't make the cuts. So there's really, the main option is to either keep on going with pay as you go, or at some point we're going to have to ask the taxpayers of the town to fully fund it. We are putting together an OPEB article in town meeting, as you know, so that we can at least establish the trust fund.
What's the cost of pay as you go versus the fully funded?
Right now, it's part of just what we're doing for our health care every year, what we have for the retiree benefits. So, yeah, I think if you read the report, the actuarial cost is about 4.7 million a year, I think, and we're funding about 2.7. And again, please read it, because I don't think I brought that one with me. But I thought it was important for the Finance Committee to have this document to see what's going on, and also to, to realize when we're looking at the budgets and what we're funding, there are other great liabilities out there that we're not covering because we do not have the ability to do so right now. No. Yeah. Yep. I don't think we can take any more bad news, right?
Well, we need you to hang around for a little bit.
Yep, absolutely.
Kind of get comfortable, maybe look up the answer to the question that Mr. Worthen asked you while you're getting comfortable. Do you have a question? Yes.
I got a small percentage of what you guys were just talking about. I understood a small percentage. It affects the labor contracts. Excuse me.
It is on. Oh, no, it's okay.
It affects our labor contracts, is that correct?
No, not really. That's the retirees. So you would have to.
Yeah, but if you're working now, you eventually become a retiree, and those obligations are going to be future obligations for us, right? So doesn't it say that we have got to be more aggressive in our contract negotiations?
Not going to answer that.
What?
I'm not going to answer that.
Okay. I
Tom,
know
I'm
what
not
you're
trying
doing,
to be
yeah,
rude.
but, I mean, it's, other towns and municipalities are doing that, and we've got to look at, when new employees come in, that they may have to go into a different schedule, or else we're giving out false promises.
I don't think we can discuss that. I don't think you can discuss that.
I'm currently in open negotiations
Right.
with several of the unions, so it would be.
Well, it says we got to be a guerrilla in our negotiations.
All right, let's move on. We'll
Larry?
yes, go ahead, Marilyn.
I think what Tom is getting to is the general question, if we all watch what's happening in Detroit and see in the big picture. Derek can't speak to it because it's current in our town, but I think this just brings up the issue that there's 95% of the communities out there are not funding this liability. We've all got it. We all know about it. There isn't really a whole lot of wiggle room. We're going to create a trust fund that we're not going to put any money into because we recognize it. And I think that's the first step. Maybe that sounds like one of those 12-step things. Our first step is to recognize the problem. And there'll be more discussion on it later. But at this point, I don't think that there's anything realistically that we can do when you look at a number like 82 million.
There are meetings. The Plymouth Board?
Yeah, the Plymouth County
County.
Retirement Board, they do that's our pension. And then we've also have the other post-employment benefits, which is the retiree health care. Plymouth County, we're facing an assessment of approximately 32% increase. So we're about, if you look at it, I think that would be close to $960,000 for FY15 was with their new actuarial report. That's if they kept with going to 2030. Having fully funding it. They voted to push it out to, I believe, 2034, and we'll have the new assessment in about 2 weeks. I asked the gentleman from Plymouth County Retirement Board. One of the issues that I've had with it from a budgeting standpoint is 1 year you're having a 16% assessment. The next year that's reduced by 4%. And then you have a 6% assessment. And in the negotiations, because believe it or not, you actually negotiate, they vote on whether they're going to move it out to further years or not. The request was, well, what if we just had 8% increases a year? And while an 8% increase is a large increase, you can at least plan for it and budget it, because these other ones going up and down, I mean, a $1 million assessment in 1 year is just, it's a disaster. I believe we're going to have a high assessment for FY15 because I don't think their vote to push it out is going to bring it down to the 8%. I think it's going to be a higher level for FY15, and then thereafter you're looking at 8% increases every year. So I'm waiting to hear about that and see how we fund it.
I think if I read this correctly in the budget, it was 2.8 million that we had in the budget
Yep.
for 14.
Yes, and I think for 15 we had projected 6% increases on there, which was sort of an average of where we've been going. So clearly when it was going to be over 30%, it was a shocker.
All right. Any other questions? Mrs. Jordan.
This sort of touches on that. I saw the ad that was for the new planning
Mhm.
fellow. And I noticed that it said salary with the steel workers. And I'm wondering, since that's a management position, and it's a new position,
No.
no, it's not a new position, so maybe that won't work. A new employee, maybe we could start a precedent where we don't have them in the union, the management union.
It's a union position. It exists as a union position. When we create the contract with the unions, you will list what positions are on there. And if you bring in a new position, the unions are going to try and impact bargain to make sure it gets in there. So we would probably have to give the union something to not have those positions in there. So what would be considered a department head is going to be a steel worker. There are currently, except for the employees under 20 hours a week, the only people that are not in the union are myself, and it would be the police chief position.
And there's no way to,
There's two positions, is that what
Yeah, the school, I believe, the superintendent on the town side.
and there's no way to get to now have management not be union, other than just with negotiations through the union?
Correct. They've unionized and they are a union.
What we probably need to do if we're going to have a union discussion is do it on a different day because we have the negotiator for the town sitting with us. We don't need any trouble at this point.
Yeah, I could actually, because we've closed the contract, although it's open again, because it was only for the 2 years essentially there, I could tell you exactly what would happen. We would, you would go down a line where we would end up having to pay probably treble in damages on it. So it would be a cost to the town in the long run.
Let's move on to fall town meeting business. How about that? Has everybody got their sheet in front of them, what we voted on and what we have not voted on at this point? Everybody but me. What do I do with it? The reason Kelly sits next to me is to keep me organized because I had it all in front of me a minute ago. All right. We did not vote on the line painting because there was not going to be an article, so that one's blank.
Correct.
All right. Do we need to take a motion of no action on that, or because it's not even going, it's going to be pulled, is it not?
Right, the motion be I move to withdraw this article.
All right. For the line painting, Article 6. So that's going to be pulled, so I don't think we have to vote on that, as far as I'm concerned. The purchase of the vacuum truck, have you all made have you made the decision on the disposition of that article?
Yes, we'll withdraw the article.
Well, that's two down, and we're batting 1,000 so far.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I understand the line painting thing, but and some of us don't get the whole background on why 7 was withdrawn.
Okay. Do you want to
Could I
explain
just
it,
get a
or you want
quick
me to
explanation?
give it a
Yeah,
shot? Or?
I can give it a whirl.
Okay.
Actually, the quick back to the hotel motel excise is 6%, and we've adopted the maximum at 6%.
Anyway, so we pulled in 18,000 in, is that a 30-day period? Is that the month?
No, that would be a quarterly disbursement,
Quarter.
and that is our summer disbursement. So that will
So
be our
it's $300,000 of rents.
Yeah, essentially. So it's when you go to other towns and you go on vacation and you book a hotel room for $99 and you end up paying $120 and scream. That's what they're doing as well. So,
All right. Now, explain the purchase vacuum truck.
yes, the purchase vacuum truck. The reason the article was put on the warrant was the funding source was sought to be the reserve fund or the retained earnings. Now, in order to use those funds, even though they have a reserve fund within their line, it's actually which I'm going to get yelled at for calling it the Finance Committee reserve fund that we have in our budget. It's not really the Finance Committee's, it's a reserve fund, but you have oversight to allow what will be spent out of there. And realistically, the sewer commissioners, and we were thinking maybe town meeting are the ones that should transfer out of that line if you wanted to use it. Retained earnings can only be appropriated by the legislative body, so town meeting. However, Mr. Campina has it within his lines appropriated from the town meeting enough money to purchase the vacuum truck. It's what he called his capital line. So you do not need an action of town meeting to purchase this. If it were a new vehicle, because of the capital bylaw, you would need to bring it before town meeting to allow the authorization. That's why, if you remember back in the spring special town meeting, we had an article to be allowed to purchase the ambulance, and then in regular town meeting, we had an article to fund it. We were funding it as part of the budget on there. So that was because the ambulance is new. So that's just some of the fun parts of the bylaws.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? All right, so that's, oh boy, here we go again.
So should we actually take the vote of no action?
Well, the article is basically dead. They're going to vote, yeah, I mean, we could. I'll entertain a motion for no action. It doesn't matter if the
Doesn't
article's
matter
going to
if
be
they're withdrawing
pulled.
it.
If you're withdrawing the article.
That's, yeah, what I'm thinking is we're gonna have a few articles that are pulled, these two, the fingerprinting, so we'll probably have a consent agenda. We'll go over that, but we'll have the consent agenda at the beginning and say articles, X, Y, Z, and vote to withdraw them, so.
That would be my recommendation. I mean, I noticed that the Board of Selectmen took no action on those 2 articles. We need to put something in there, our recommendation, as to whether, we can't just leave it up to the town meeting and then, people read these things in advance, and they will be puzzled as to why there is no vote or there is nothing there if we basically state what the town administrator just stated. Then it's a good explanation for why it's withdrawn, and it certainly, I think, would make town meeting flow a little easier with the consent agenda if people knew in advance why it's being withdrawn.
Anybody else want to weigh in? Oh, I knew Mrs. Donahue was
Yeah,
going to
I'm
weigh
not
in.
sure I want to go down the line to give them any more time to talk about it. I mean, it's being withdrawn, so there's nothing to talk about, I guess is my thought on it.
I don't think we're going to give the voters the opportunity to weigh in if we combine them into one group and vote no action on them. I think that's, I don't know, I'm kind of caught in the middle of this because I don't want to put information out here that, I mean, it's going to be no action. We're going to bundle them together. If anybody wants to hold an article, they certainly will be able to hold an article from that. But I think we have enough information between our committee and Derek to explain why we're voting no action on it. So I don't,
Then
you
Bonnie's
know,
saying we should put it out there.
Yes.
so-
I'm not sure I really want to put it out there, but I'm open to, yes, Mr. Worthing.
My question is, we're putting it out, we put it out there. I mean, people see it, and then we say it's gonna be withdrawn, and we're saying we're gonna purchase a vacuum truck, which is, if somebody's smart enough, they're gonna say, well, how much is a vacuum truck? Why do we need it? And all that sort of stuff. To ask questions on something that we're seeking to withdraw. It seems like that particular one is a red flag and won't.
If they ask to bundle certain articles together for no action and nobody objects to that one, then it goes through as planned. But I understand what you're saying. We could still put something out there, but I believe that from a verbal standpoint between the town administrator and what we have, I think we can explain it. I don't think we should have a 30-minute debate on it. I mean, not us personally, but at town meeting, I don't see a 30-minute debate. I
No,
mean, we're going to pull
that
the.
was my point. I wanted to avoid a 30-minute debate.
Me too.
So if you take a vote of no action and put under the FinCom explanation, the reason why we took no action is because it is not necessary to go to town meeting by the TA's explanation. Therefore, people read that in advance. They go into town meeting, they're prepared, oh, that's no big deal. And then when the consent agenda is read, they've got that explanation and there won't be any
I see where you're
objection.
going.
I get where Bonnie's going now. Actually, I like more conversation about this because it saves a little confusion at town meeting. I think if we say no action, and the Board of Selectmen have said no action, then the article's withdrawn. It seems to make sense. It bothers me more when we've had favorable action and an article gets withdrawn. So I have come to agree with you. I will say I vote no action on Article number 6 for the line painting fund. I move that we, yes, I move that we vote no action.
Okay, need a second.
Second.
Discussion, Mr. Worthing?
Wait, Mike, I would like to role play and give the response as to why this is being withdrawn.
As far as the advice,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would like to hear what people would say, what we would say.
well, I mean, we would say that it's not necessary for this article to come to town meeting, that it's not,
It's a used vehicle, it was in the.
But we're doing
Yeah.
line
part of the
painting
original
first.
budget.
I don't know, but you're about to write the advice for town meeting.
But I think
Put
we're
Tom
spending
down for that.
$91,000 or whatever it is, and somebody would want to question that.
Well, they can question all they want, but I mean, it's in the line item budget capital. It is something he's budgeted for. And because it is used, it's not covered under the
What-
capital.
Excuse me, but it wasn't in the budget because he originally wanted to purchase a new one, and he only has $100,000 in this thing. The new one was $250,000, and until David came along and said we can get a used one, did it tumble to the fact that you could get the problem solved for $91,000.
The history of it is they looked in the past few years for a new truck. It was $350,000 for a new truck. Then they started trying to figure out whether you could purchase used trucks and such. However, in the spring annual town meeting, they budgeted $100,000 within their lines for capital, which is what they called capital. And the vehicle can be purchased from that line, as it was not designated specifically for it didn't say capital replace.
So for the Springtown meeting, somebody should have got up and said, what is in that $100,000? What are your plans for that $100,000? Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
that would be the.
That's how it should have been reviewed. Okay.
But they didn't. So, but we're still going to have to write advice, so I would suggest that you write the advice when we take this vote. Is that okay with you, Mr.
I
Worthing?
didn't think we have big smoke come up in the room.
And please have that into Miss Kelly Barrasso by the 9th. So,
Okay.
well, let me take a vote. So all those in favor of no
We're
action?
actually voting on number 6. We're still on line painting. That was what the motion
Oh,
was.
I thought we were doing 7.
No?
We were together.
Well-
We backed up
We
and
backed
said.
up and
Well,
did
let's
6
back
first, because
up.
I did it in order, sorry.
Apologize. So all those in favor of no action on Article number 6, line painting fund?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All those abstain? So that's 7-0-0. No action. That's an NA, not an FA. All right. I'll also entertain a motion for Article number 7, the purchase of a vacuum truck.
I move no action on Article number 7 to purchase the vacuum truck.
Can we put in there about Mr. Worthen writing the advice as well? Or?
I really think the advice should just be.
Well, he's going to write it, so
I
you
think
need
it
to
should
have
just
that
be,
discussion.
this item is not necessary at town meeting at this time.
Waiting for a second.
Bonnie second.
Second.
I was-
All those in favor of no action on Article 7, purchase vacuum truck, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain? 7-0-0. Well, my voice sounds really booming coming off
I
this
know, we're
mic.
learning how to use the mics.
I'm sorry. Article 13, I think we're going to have to wait. That's the
You wanna
Wareham
cover-
High.
Do you want to take an official vote on 12 as well?
Unpaid
There-
bills?
there were none?
No unpaid bills? I think Mr. Worthing's going to write the opinion on that one. There were none. Is that okay, Tom? Article 12, we just need advice that there were none.
You want to take a no action
We'll
vote on
take
that?
care of it.
It was done. It was clean for the first time.
Yes, and that was excellent. So, and there still is clean, Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll entertain a I'll entertain a motion for no action on Article 12, 2013 unpaid bills.
I
So
move,
moved.
Small round of applause, I think.
yes,
We
So
did
moved.
that- We did
Second.
that last week.
yes, we'll do it again this week.
okay,
It's still
sure.
good.
Okay, all those in favor of no
Aye.
action? All those opposed? Abstain, 7-0-0. We're not going to be able to vote on Article 13. There's a little confusion at this point.
Well, can those of us who didn't hear about the confusion get an update?
I can try.
All I heard was a little
Do you want me to
chit-chat.
go first, or do you want to go first?
I think it's the simple thing to say is the school committee will need to take some action tonight, and until we hear from them, we shouldn't. I shouldn't say. I just concluded myself with you guys here. We probably shouldn't vote on it.
Okay.
So, until
We're
we hear
not
from
going to vote tonight, and you're
Yeah.
right. We're going to have to wait to hear from the school committee. Hopefully, we will hear from them by the 9th. I will drop an email off tomorrow. Yes, Mr. Worthen.
Last year, we got into a discussion about who's responsible for the buildings. And it netted out that the maintenance department was responsible for the buildings, and the town was responsible for the cost of maintaining those buildings. And now we're coming, this was in connection with, I believe, with the basketball roof and some buses. And it just seems that we're back on the same thing where where the school is taking responsibility for the maintenance of their buildings and also the maintenance of the buses. I thought Mr. Heath looked at this very carefully and came up with the conclusion that it's the town that should be responsible for this.
Well, I think then we got back to the issue of the school as part of the town.
Yeah.
So the issue is not maintaining, the issue is the capital. This is an expenditure for a study. This is not the capital expenditure, which I think at that point in time, when it comes to that, that'll have to go through, because obviously we're not going to pull the $1 million or so it's going to take to repair it out of our pockets. That in fact will have to go out to bond, I guess, is the best way to do it at that point. So it is the town's responsibility from the capital standpoint when that happens. But this is the feasibility study. So I'm not trying to split hairs here.
Yeah,
I
no,
think, but from our standpoint, wow, let me try to be as honest as I can. One of the things we try to strive for this year is not just, well, we'll find the money somewhere. I don't like that answer. That's not a very clear answer. And as a finance committee, I think we should demand more, and we have. So the answer now is that the school committee will go back and review where they can pull the money from for the study. Now, that's not to say the roof, when the roof happens, that the school is going to do that. It'll probably come through the town, I believe, at some, I mean, Mr. Sullivan, please chime in anytime you'd like, but that's going to have to be bonded out through the town and dealt with that way. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say we'd really have only two options. You'd have a debt exclusion or borrowing. So, I think if I were a betting man, we'll be borrowing.
Right. But as far as the maintenance, this isn't really a maintenance issue yet or a capital issue yet.
The only reason I bring it up is that the school should be responsible for teaching the kids and not be worried about buildings falling down, other than just general keeping the place clean and picked up. And here we've got them wasting their time on that issue where it should be the town and their maintenance departments should be carrying the ball.
I think town council would take, not exception, would disagree with you. There is in the Mass General laws that a building within the care and custody of the school, that they do need to maintain it and make sure it's being upheld to a standard. So we could have if it came down to court, it'd be an interesting decision.
And this is a very difficult discussion for me because obviously I can lean either way, but
Did people remember the discussion last year?
oh yeah, I remember the discussion. But again, you didn't get a 100% agreement on this discussion, and you're never going to get it in this room because, well, I just want to save it for another time. But as far as the capital issue, this is not a capital issue. This is a study. I'm in favor of this because this allows us up to 68 cents on a dollar reimbursement from this program.
No, I understand why we're doing it.
And that's, if we don't do this, then we end up paying for the entire roof, which is not something I think is very smart on our part. But in order to get to that part, somebody has to come up with $60,000. And I don't want to say it's the town's responsibility or the schools, but from our standpoint, we've asked them to decide, and this is the decision they're giving us, which I think is fair. Their decision is what we'll take. We want to know what the funding source is before we make a decision. Is that fair enough, or is that just way too? Go ahead.
I was just going to correct you that we actually get the money. We don't get the money, but that's okay.
I'm so sorry.
That was for the harbor master crack, so now we're even.
Yes, oh my gosh. Someone said to me the other night, wicked something, and
Yeah.
my ears cringe. So we're going to hold Article 13. Appropriation transfers 14. That's going to be a last minute deal?
Yes, the only one that I have right now is to fund the planning position to a full-time position. If I'm looking at it, I took what we paid the town planner before. His salary was approximately $43,000. We paid him in July and August, so I gave that a value of 9 payments altogether. Took what we had for him out of the 52 weeks, so the 42,000 divided by 52. And when I took the 9 weeks out of there, in order to fund at the highest scale, what you just put it there, we would need to transfer $25,000 into the line. Looking at the fixed costs and the debt service principal, because we will not make a payment at the beginning of the year for one of the bonds that we didn't borrow, we did the ban on it. It will be, I believe, a January 1 payment. We would have approximately $32,000 extra in that account. Usually, just like the $78,000 that we had, I don't like to touch those, especially not within the. You want to save that for the end of the year if you had any sort of disasters, storms, or anything. But not having a town planner and a full-time town planner has turned out to be a severe issue for the town, as you've seen with the articles coming forward for town meeting to try and quantify how much we lose by not having proper items put in through our planning department and having those, you can, I couldn't quite give you a dollar value, but if we would lose a big company coming in or somebody that wants to invest in the town, I think it's well worth the extra money. So that is as of right now, and I'm not going to ask for a vote on it, but just so you know where I would see it coming from would be not to raise and appropriate the extra funding that we've received from the cherry sheet or reducing the state and county assessments. It would be to move from the debt service principal line.
Okay. But that's the only one you have at this point. Yes,
Yeah.
Mrs. Donahue.
I'm going to jump right in because this seems to be a good way to segue into that. Some of us have been asked questions in public, and I just want to make sure that I'm very clear on it. With regard to congratulations, you have a raise. We don't have a lot of extra money in the town, so before, I'll give you a minute to compose your answer while I give you my pat on the back on why I think it's so important that we have key positions, because we've lost a lot of lesser positions. We've seen the value of somebody managing the town planning aspect of it, and while we can't put actual dollar costs on what we may lose, what kind of lawsuits we might get into for bad decisions, and the problems trying to move articles forward without that expertise. We understand the value of that expertise. So understand that I'm fully supportive of that and understand what your worth to us is, but we need to be able to justify that, and we need to know where it's coming from.
No, absolutely. Thank you for the kind words. My new contract starts, I believe, on January 8th or 9th, so it's a mid in the fiscal year. We do have enough money within the town administrator salary line. My hope for this year, and I'm probably going to keep on fighting going into the future, is to eventually hire an HR director, because I feel the good ones worth their weight in gold. We were looking to maybe fund a part-time this year, and without taking on the extra staff, we would have the money within the administration budget. So there will not need to be a transfer.
Thank you.
All right. Where were we?
15.
15. So we're holding 14, but you're hoping that by next week, and I'm just trying to help him. I'm giving him the words to speak. By next week, you'll pretty much have a grip on what you're going to transfer.
Right, I'll have it written out so that we can, like we've done in the past, you'll see we're taking it from debt service. So from A, debt service amount, $25,000, to B, a planning salary. And then we'll also show what the new amount for the debt service is, and then what the new amount for the planning is. And probably as part of the explanation, I will list the maximum of the pay scale of the planner, because I'm sure that'll come up. And I think we're probably all of a like mind. If you can answer any questions ahead of time and spare the extra minutes of town meeting, it helps out a lot.
Yeah, we hope to this year especially be able, with the information you give us, which we thank you for, because it's a lot easier for us to sit up there and explain an article or give advice when we know the line items that we're dealing with, instead of we'll get it from somewhere, which is never one of my favorite answers to begin with, and I'm pretty sure most people up here agree with that one. So we'll hold off on the appropriations. Any union contracts ratified at this point?
Yeah, the steelworkers contract, and spoken about in an open meeting. When they ratified the contract, what they were provided was a step 6. In the old contracts that we had for the personnel plan, only allowed for 5 steps. I believe every union now has 6 steps or higher. So a 6 step is worth 3%. So but you only go to a 6 step after 10 years of employment. So if it's somebody that's on step 5 and they've only been here for 5 years, they would not reach the 6th step till after their 10th year of service. So we have, if you remember from the I think it was the April town meeting in May 2012, in the annual budget. When you look at your budgets, I don't know if you have it with you, you'll see under the other budget articles, you should see in fiscal 2012 the amount of $104,967,000, I believe, for judgments and collective bargaining. That would be for fiscal 2012. So you okay.
Yeah, it was reserved for collective bargaining, yeah.
Correct. Yep. So what that does is it creates its own article that becomes a fund that you can move money out of from town meeting. I've been trying to see if it could work within the budgets because overall the cost, I believe, for Unit 4, which is the steel workers, which is such as the administrative assistants, some of the assistant treasurer collector, conservation agent, they're what's called the lower steel worker union. The cost of them reaching a step, having a step 6, would be approximately $10,000. Now, you know, from some of the budgets, you look at the library, $1,100 for one. In some of the what's another one? CETA, $1,600 depending on the person's salary. And actually, all right, now we're looking at $8,700 because that's a grant position and it wouldn't affect us on this. I don't think that the individual budgets are going to be able to, they've been budgeted so tight this year for them, are going to be able to absorb those. So I think I'll be looking for a transfer from them. We could wait till spring, but it doesn't, when we're working with the auditors and the Department of Revenue, it doesn't look good to push things off. If we have the town meeting and the contract's been ratified in this fiscal year, you're supposed to take the first action that you can at the town meeting. My preference would be to put it off to see whether you actually needed the transfers, but we don't have the the courtesy to make the wrong decisions. So,
Is this something you can bring next week? Just give us a...
Yeah, that's because I want to sit down with the accountant and see how would we break this out. Is it going to be from that article, which has been an encumbered amount that's sitting out there?
That
Are
was
we
my
hit-
question.
Yeah. It
So
becomes
even though that's 2012 and 2013, it's encumbered already, so we
Right.
can't do anything else with it at this point. It has to come out of that fund. Am I
right.
correct?
It becomes its own article for you to. You would have to use an act of town meeting to take any money out of that.
Gotcha.
Doesn't flow to free cash, so the money's sitting out there. What I'm really trying to see is, are we going to move this over in one lump sum to hit against, or are we going to move it over to each individual department? I know that for the accounting department, it's a lot of work to hit each department, but I want to make sure what's the right way. The easiest way isn't always the right way. So I will have that available for next week, but I wanted everybody to see what we're looking at so you have the understanding. So it'd be approximately 9,000 from the lower unit.
How much, one more time?
I'm going to use a round figure on it,
Okay.
$9,000. And the upper unit, which is the department heads, is approximately $6,000. Now, the reason why there's less from the department heads, even though they make more money, is we only have a few department heads that have been here for more than 10 years.
So that's the only union contract that we're looking at for this town meeting.
Right. So that one's been ratified. The contract's been signed, and it was done in this fiscal year. So
Okay.
we could. if it was done last fiscal year, I would not be able to do it at this time.
Do we get a copy of the contract next week?
Yeah, I can give it's,
Okay.
you should probably get one emailed to you. They're public documents.
Well, I would prefer to email them to us. That way I can distribute it before the meeting and everybody could look it over if there's any question. Not that we can change anything. We're
Yep.
not, but at least it gives us an idea of what's going on.
Yeah, because their contract's not going to give you salary scales. It's just going to say what units are in there, and I think it would mention having the step 6. But there's I don't think they have the lines. I'll have to double check on it. So.
All right, we'll hold that one until next week. Yes, Mr. Worthen.
The number, the dollar amount you're talking about is salary. Is that right?
Correct.
It does not include health, pension, or anything in addition to salary? Is that
No,
right?
this would be the only change to what the
The obligation is going to be greater than the salary number you quoted.
the obligation already existed. There's no change from them being in the union to not being in the union as to whether
But their pension is going to go up because they're now at a higher salary.
they gauge pension increases. They gauge salary increases of, I believe, 4% a year. We haven't hit that. They took 2 zeros in their contract for fiscal 2012, 2013. So technically, they would be ahead of the game. We'd be ahead of the game on the pension. Also, we have to remember that our employees, the town and the school, changed their health insurance benefits without impact bargaining, getting additional revenues from 75-25 to 70-30 for the first year, and then 5 additional years, 67.5 to 32.5, saving the town approximately $4.5 million. While taking zeros in their contracts, they essentially took negative.
I actually think that addresses an earlier comment you made as well. So, go ahead. Is there something else?
Maybe the dollars, if they increase their salary, and particularly before they retire, because their pension is based on their last 3 years or whatever the formula is, we've given them an opportunity to have increased earnings in those last years. Is that correct? And that means their pension, which is a percentage of their earnings.
Their
goes up.
pensions are, what I'm saying is our pension obligation is based off of 4% increases every year. No, I'd like you to listen to me and to understand. So what our current hits are, our unfunded actuarial obligations are based off of 4%. When they took 2 zeros, our liabilities went down. Now we are increasing here, and even if it's a 3%, that's still a decrease versus what the 4% actually would be. So everything you've asked for, you've just been given.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on. I'm not sure how we're going to handle Article 16. Well, before you say anything, the problem we're having now is that the motion was made by Mrs. Donahue, and the second was made by Mr. Camerata, who's not here. We voted on this article, but in fact, this article is going to be another one of those no actions that they're going to move to, I guess, Springtown meeting or later date. Let's just call it later date.
Yeah, I think later date.
Do you want to explain why, or?
Absolutely. We spoke about it last night's meeting with the selectmen. There are currently other communities that have implemented this, and some of them have brought it to town meeting the first time, effectively in the manner that we have, and basically it hasn't gone so well. So what they've brought it around a second time, and we're looking at what issues they are dealing with, what they're answering, to make sure that when we're bringing the article forward, it's a finished product, and that it simplifies the whole process.
Mr. Chair, I
Yes.
don't think you necessarily need Dominic to withdraw his, you just need to take a vote to reconsider.
Okay.
Actually, if I may, I don't know that necessarily we need to reconsider, because we voted not in favor of this article.
Yeah, I know, but they're going to pull the article,
That's-
so.
that's
I mean,
fine,
I'm
because-
fine leaving it like it is, but I would
My-
prefer because of, go ahead, I'm
Well, I was going
sorry.
to say, my rationale being is that we did not favor this article. We did not favor moving forward with it, and they're going to pull it. So that's kind of goes along with what our decision was. We found some flaws in this article, so we didn't think it was a good choice. I'm always just afraid when we say no action, when you bring something back, people will say, oh, the FinCom voted against it before. If it comes back in the spring, we can look at the new article and its merits and say, we didn't like it in the fall, it's okay now. But I think because we weren't in favor of it, I don't think it looks badly on us
No,
that they're
I
withdrawing
would
it.
disagree with that.
Okay.
I would disagree with that. What the town administrator is explaining is, or the way I interpret this is that their feeling is that there needs to be a little more education on this before it comes to town meeting, so people better understand it, okay? I happen to be in the minority vote here. I would really hate for town meeting to see, oh, well, the FinCom didn't like it last time, so the next time it rolls around, well, maybe they like it now, but why didn't they like it the last time, okay? So I feel like you're sending the wrong message. If they're withdrawing it because they feel as though it needs it needs more study or needs more education, then I think in the spirit of that, we should reconsider our vote. To just leave it, well, we already knocked it down, so that's okay, I think is the wrong attitude to have.
I'm just saying they'll re-educate us so that we can vote favorably for it in the spring. So, but
I'm kind of up in the air, but let me tell you what I have. If we send this out there like it is, and it does come back in the spring, people are still gonna, I agree with Mrs. Catulli that people are gonna remember we voted 142. And I think one of the reasons we voted 142 is the enforcement side of it, some of the other issues that went around with this were never fully explained to us. So we voted on an article because it wasn't fully explained to begin with. And now they're offering to pull the article and come back and fully explain it. So I'm still going to entertain a motion for reconsidering, and then we'll figure out on the vote what we're doing. But if anybody else wants, anybody else wants to weigh in before we do this? Because I see a lot of shaking heads. Mr. Hurd.
make them talk.
Yes,
Make them talk.
I just hope that they not only resubmit it, but also make some changes to make it a little clearer. So it's a bylaw, and the bylaw should be clear and it should be enforceable.
I think that is actually the intent. It's not just a question of explaining it, but and there were some issues in other towns that they have to clear up that are still in this one. So
Right.
I'm not saying it's going to come back as the same article. It's obviously going to be done
Improved.
better. But we also, when they bring it back, we'll have better explanations for why, because I think there was some confusion on timing and enforcement, and those are things that needed to be cleared up anyway. Anybody else want to weigh in? Yes, Mrs. Jordan.
I don't see why we have to vote no action. I'm with Marilyn. I think the way it was before was that's what we voted. We voted no. And in the spring, we might vote yes, but we voted no.
Again, I was going to address that, but let's just
It's
go.
parliamentary.
I will
You have to
entertain a
vote not to
motion.
reconsider.
I'll entertain a motion for
No, my-
reconsideration on this article.
My question is, can we do a reconsideration? We just have to have a vote to reconsider.
You have to vote to reconsider.
We have to vote
We
for
don't have to
reconsider.
withdraw the second.
No.
We're not taking it back,
No.
we're just reconsidering.
No.
Okay.
All right, so I'm entertaining a motion for reconsideration.
I'll move reconsideration on Article 16.
I need a second.
You can't, you were the minority party, I have to move it.
No, it has to be someone from the majority party that moves it.
Right, I'll move
Oh,
it.
I'm sorry.
So Marilyn,
Away.
sorry.
I will
Mrs.
move for reconsideration.
I need a second. I think you can still second,
Okay,
though.
second it.
Okay, all right. All those in favor of reconsidering Article 16, say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Well, so far we're 3-3. All those abstaining?
Well, I wasn't here, so
Well, you've got to vote too, so.
I abstained, because I don't know what the issue
Well, now we have a tie vote, which means nobody, we don't reconsider the article. So we'll leave it like it is.
So you will have to write an explanation as to why it was turned down.
No, I think Dave did already. Dave was already on that.
But see, now this is the issue that I face, is that we can taint the future article by what we say now. That's my problem
That was
with this.
my problem.
I you know, that was my only problem, but I wanted to let you guys decide, and then we did it, so. Yes,
Can
Mrs.
I would then make the suggestion that our opinion be that the article needed more clarification and just leave it very basic at that, rather than going into all the reasons we had against it, in hopes that when it comes back in the spring, we can then say, they clarified it and we're good. So rather than, but all the points that we brought up should still be brought up to the proponents of the article to make sure that we're clear on that. Does that make you feel better?
I agree
'Cause I don't
with you.
want to, I think
I
I can
agree.
use,
We-
I think
we
I can use
should
the term
explain.
damn it for the spring, yeah.
Are you still going to write that explanation?
I will rewrite my explanation.
And all those great words that you used, and that, I wanted to read that, because I'd be the first, well,
so
I'll read that, but,
We'll use that when we have discussion on it.
okay. All right, well, thank you. So let's move on to Article 17, the demolition delay bylaw. A little update in that arena. They weren't going to have a quorum to meet on this, so we're not going to get an answer, but I think,
Well, back up. What?
I'm on 17.
Yeah,
Amend the demolition delay bylaw.
yeah.
The issue at hand was whether it was 50 or 75. They were trying to change it to 75 years, and then I believe also Mr. Hurd brought up putting a fixed date on it as well. And they just have not got together and voted. Now there's two schools of thought here. This does not have a financial impact on the town. So therefore, do we weigh in? That's the first one. I know, and here we go. I'm just firing up Mrs. Catulli over here. But before you say anything, if you read the charter, we weigh in on all articles that of a financial nature. But, and here we go. I'll get you in a minute. You don't have to put your hand up. I know you're next. So we're not going to have the information next week. We can certainly put it on hold until that time and then discuss it then. But again, I'm going to go ahead, Mrs. Catulli. Have at it.
Whether things have a financial impact directly or indirectly, and many of these sorts of things tend to have a financial impact indirectly, especially if somebody, it's zoning or planning or whatever says, I really want to tear this building down. The Historical Society gets in the middle of it and says the building's 75 years old and you can't tear it down. Then we're in a lawsuit, blah, 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 blah. So please don't tell me it doesn't have a financial impact. Okay? That's my first question. My second is, that's my statement. My second is, refresh my memory. This was the draft. Has this gone to print in the newspaper? What timing is that?
I think the original, did that go to the newspapers? The original, which shows
I
that
believe so.
they're changing it from 50 to 75.
Exactly. So what I heard was that they didn't want to just go from 50 to 75. They actually wanted to put a date in there. And to me, that completely changes the article.
I agree. That's why we have to hold it. But I believe actually the discussion wasn't 50 to 75. It was 50 to the 75. There was the original change. They wanted somebody, I believe it was Mr. Worthen said, why not 100?
But the best recommendation was 1913.
All right, but as
But that changes the whole
I have, we're not going to,
article.
let's not do it tonight, because I have some reservations about putting a fixed date on. I really do.
I mean,
Because now we're going to have to change it again in 5 years, or 20 years, when someone says, wait a minute, 1913, well, what about 1976 for them? Or, it's going to be, anyway, we'll have that discussion next week, so let's put this one on hold till next week, and I'll contact, Mrs. Donahue, please weigh
Has
in.
anyone shared that with the Historic Society? Because after all, it was at our suggestion that they go back and discuss that. It's a little bit disingenuous.
We
if-
did share all that with them as
Okay.
well. So, and she was going to the historical meeting to have a discussion with them, but they did not have a quorum. And I'll get back with her and I'll clear, yes. Mr., would you like to step up to the microphone, please?
No, just a quick statement. This whole thing is an individual financial problem, not town anyway. There's no town finance involved in this at all. It's individual.
So the town's not demolishing any buildings.
That's correct.
We'll
Bonnie
hold
would
it.
take exception
We're
to
going to
that.
hold it till next
would.
week because I understand what you're saying, and I'm of the school of thought that I've been an accountant for 32 years. I can make anything a financial issue I want. However, I don't want to make this one a financial issue. Mr. Slavin, would you?
Just to remind you very quickly, this is the Wareham Historical Commission, not the Wareham Historical Society.
I am so sorry. Commission. I'll note that. Okay, so let's hold this till next week, and then we'll throw out the mud and start wrestling on that one. Article 18 is the waterways bylaw that people were supposed to go home and do their homework, and there will be a small quiz afterwards. So, has everybody read the waterways bylaws? Yes, Mr. Worthing.
I got through 15 of the 27 pages.
Again,
Without falling asleep?
okay. We have a cheat sheet of the changes that. Right, that was on the front of it. Yeah. I don't have it in front of me. I have it at home. Wait, I may have it here. Excuse me a minute. Why?
Yep, there it is.
So, for all you people that read and didn't use the cheat sheet in the front, shame on you.
I didn't get a cheat sheet.
I can send it to you.
Again, before I turn the mic over to Bonnie, I don't feel like this has a lot of financial impact, although it probably will enforcement-wise, because obviously there's some changes in here that are going to affect enforcement, which could cost taxpayers some.
It affects the character of the town, and the character of the town affects its appeal. The revenue.
Tom, you gotta use the mic. All right. All right. Do we want to vote on this tonight?
I'm all set to vote on this tonight.
Okay.
I mean, I think
I'll-
the harbor master's done his due diligence, he's researched this, he's done a lot of hard work. I have confidence in him. I don't think it's up to us to micromanage
Thank you.
rules and regulations. I move favorable action on article number
18.
amend waterways bylaw.
I need a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain? 7-0-0. That was quick. I should have just turned it over to Bonnie in the first place. Could have got out of here quicker. Now we enter the zoning bylaw zone. Or the zoning, or is it zoning? Yes. We are not going to have, do you want to talk about this? Because I know that, let me,
Derek, can we let Derek go home?
yeah, Derek, go by.
Just
I'm
raise
sorry.
your hands, Derek.
I
Say, may I be
appreciate
excused?
all your input, and we certainly are glad to have you working with us like this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We can do a couple of check.
Use the mic.
I'm here as the town planner. Thank you very much for the raise.
That's right, if you were a selectman, you'd have a bow tie on.
That's why I
That's
don't
how
have
we
it
know
on.
the difference.
I'm sorry, we're skipping 19?
We're,
We need to talk about, in general, I guess, first, because all these zoning articles will go before a public hearing on the 21st of October, which is way too late for us to make any opinion known. Before you talk, all these zoning articles will go before a public hearing on the 21st.
No, the only ones that will go in a public hearing is the TDR sign bylaw and the marijuana clinic
Not the sign regulations,
sign bylaw.
not the zoning bylaw tables,
No.
okay, and not the amend floodplain, which we already
No.
voted on, or the transfer development rights.
did we vote
TDR?
on the floodplain?
TDR will.
TDR, that's what's transfer development rights. It's known as
All right.
TDR. Sign bylaw, marijuana clinic.
Yeah, she didn't set that. 19,
Okay. Anybody want to address this? Do we really want to be voting on these articles at this point?
No, absolutely not.
My expert on the board on that is Mrs. Donahue, so I'm going to allow her to speak first.
I am not in favor of voting on anything for which we do not have full information. We don't know what the article ultimately is going to look like. And I am a little bit irritated, and since you are not really the town planner, I can say it. Having a zoning hearing a week before town meeting is a little bit like doing your Christmas shopping on Christmas Eve and then being upset that the stores don't have everything you need. Town planning date's been set. We know what's coming. We know what the timeline is that we have to get things done by. We're using our calendar to get all the meetings that we have and get our votes in. No reflection on zoning, but this happened in planning, but this happens over and over again. And we end up with articles that come to town meeting that haven't been properly vetted, haven't been read through for proper legal descriptions, and they're flawed, and it gets us in trouble. So, no, I don't want to vote on anything that hasn't had a public hearing yet, and we don't really know what it's going to look like in the end. I'm done.
The other side to that, and no, you're not done. Step up here. Do we want to put that down as advice on the articles, or we just want to let that be said at town meeting?
Other people can talk. I said my piece. I'm done.
Let
Somebody
me
else talk.
let me make sure I understand which ones we're talking about. First off, Kelly, can you? I have in my notes here that we voted no action on 19 Cranberry
I don't think
Lane.
we voted, I think we said we're taking no action, because I have it right here. I don't think we voted no action, I think we said we're
Because
taking
they,
no
the
action.
Board of Selectmen hadn't done their thing yet,
Okay.
so.
All right. All right. So can you explain to me which articles we're looking at that are zoning the Cranberry Way? We have no information.
We're looking
Center
at-
Point.
19,
Cranberry
20.
Lane is a selectmen's article.
That's the
Right.
Board of Selectmen. Zoning
All
is
right.
20.
Transfer number 20. Transfer development rights.
Yep.
That's the TD whatever.
TDR.
Thank you. Establish zoning bylaws for the medical marijuana. Correct.
Zoning bylaw.
And the sign regulation
Zoning bylaw.
and the use tables. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those articles we don't have proper information for, but you said only which 2 are going to be handled at the public meeting?
No, you have proper information for 2.
Okay, and which 2 are those?
That would be your tables, but they may or may not be bringing that forward because there's some disconnect between the former town planner, Charlie Rowley, who's doing the work, and the planning office as to whether it was all completed properly or not.
And the other one? You said there were 2.
The FEMA maps.
The what?
Those zoning maps are FEMA maps, which
Right,
is
those-
provided by
so-
the government.
We voted on the FEMA. That was the floodplain bylaw, and we voted with the knowledge that doesn't really matter what we vote. Their FEMA's going to do
Well,
whatever they
it does
want.
It does matter what we vote, even though the board
Okay, I
last
don't
night
have a
voted
record
3-2.
of voting
I
on
don't think we
24.
voted.
It's right there. Well,
We discussed it,
oh, okay.
but we didn't vote on that.
Correct. You did not vote on it last
Yeah.
time.
We discussed
Yeah, that wasn't one that we were concerned about, so we can take that vote now if you'd like.
Just for background for you, the FEMA maps were badly out of whack about 8, 9 months ago. They went back in, fixed them. It took a lot of people in Wareham in particular who were on the highest rating of the floodplain zone, and a lot of people got moved back with the new maps. The maps themselves still are not correct. Myself and Mr. Tropiano expressed real concern about the whole FEMA process and the insurance rates, et cetera. Even though we can't do anything about it, we both voted no, but the bottom line is that town meeting hopefully will vote yes, because if they don't accept those maps, it goes back to the older maps, and that will put an unfair burden on the town even more. So you basically have to vote for it whether you like it or not, but we wanted to just have something on file, registering complaint about the whole process. Cranberry Lane, the problem is that how it works, because this is new for the town, even though it's been in existence for a long time. Person has to come, or homeowners group, or whatever they have, has to come to the Board of Selectmen to petition for the road to be accepted. At that point there, with all the paperwork submitted, it then goes to the planning board. The planning board then has to either themselves or municipal maintenance director under their direction or engineer go out, look at the roads, or the road, whatever it's gonna be, look and make sure it fits all the current standard requirements, including stormwater management. Also has to have what they call a meets and bounds, and a layout of the road. Those all have to be in place and correct. And then what they do is they come back to the the Board of Selectmen saying everything is in place, everything is correct. The Board of Selectmen then put it as a warrant item on town meeting. Town meeting votes yes or no to basically to consider to accept the road. But what happens is it comes back to the Board of Selectmen for a final decision whether we accept it or not. That's the whole process. So as of right now, we have not heard back from the planning board with all the, there's 8 different things that they found had to be taken care of. 4 of those items have been taken care of. 4 more have not. We expect to see it done in the next week or so. If it is, the Board of Selectmen will not pull the article.
Mrs. Donahue.
If they're not done, then we will pull the article. There's no other way to do this.
Okay, so if I'm being mean, I say you put a warrant article, put an article on the warrant that's not ready to be on the warrant. If I'm being understanding, I say we know these things take time. In order to move the process along in hopes that it would be ready, you put it on the warrant. Either way, it's not ready for our vote because the Board of Selectmen don't have what they need.
And the Board of Selectmen hasn't voted. We are trying to make up, unfortunately, for a situation where these people actually applied for this 2 years ago. And I'm not going to blame anybody, but we're trying to accommodate a road that should have been accepted already.
So let's put this one on hold. There's no sense in even
No,
discussing.
there's nothing I can do about it until we get a final.
All right, go down the line. Transfer development rights.
Transfer of development rights actually have been going on with hearings since 2005.
Hold on a minute. Pass these out. Everybody take one.
That's just the map that goes with the areas.
Right. But it gives a clear picture of,
Pretty
well,
colors.
in my opinion, what's going on.
What happened with the transfer of development rights, around 2007, it got basically, we'll say they got filed in a folder and everybody just kind of conveniently forgot all about it. It came back up about a year ago. We started to work on it. We had a time frame for this particular town meeting, not for the spring town meeting, because normally zoning articles should be fall town meeting, not spring, which is usually a financial. With the town planner, I'm going to go there. The bottom line is we had a date. It didn't get done, so we had to kind of rush in. Serped was doing work for us. They were given a date that wasn't for this fall town meeting. We had to catch up, and we found out they weren't prepared to get it done in time. And basically myself, Mrs. Whiteside, have stepped in to do a lot of what the town planner would do. You have 2 lawyers working this as well, just so everybody understands that. This is not, 2 people working on it. This is back and forth between Attorney Witten, who actually wrote the book on TDRs.
All right, so this article's ready to go.
This article is very close. What's actually written is okay. We're trying to simplify it even more because a TDR is very complicated. It's very difficult. We're going to bring it back at this point here because we had a hearing, basically yesterday in the workshop. We're going to go back and take and remove out all the commercial aspects of the TDR and strictly residential to residential. And we're going to simplify it. We're taking one whole section out, and we're hopefully at the hearing we'll have it done. Everybody will go through it. We have Mr. Rowley, who's very good at looking at stuff and complaining if something is right or wrong. And I agree with Mrs. Donahue about the last minute, but there is not much we can do because I can't control the circumstances of someone leaving, not finishing, and then having to pick up.
Any more questions, Mr. Worthen?
I mean, I read some of this too. What happens if we don't do this? We don't have this?
Nothing happens. It's like anything else. Either you move on to the next thing. It's just what it does is, if you want to look at an example, you go into Plymouth. I believe it was A.D. Makepeace, I think, had a project, River Run. The way that project actually worked is they basically donated 100 and some acres, 180 acres to the town of Plymouth, took those development rights and transferred them over to the River Run project in order to do that development.
But there's all of this plus points for
There'll be
bogs and stuff?
just so you understand, there'll be no plus points. We've already taken that out of there.
Okay.
It's a 1-for-1. Another one of the changes that were made.
So a person coming into town meeting will have
There will be
a chance to understand what's happening.
What we're going to try and do is, we should have the hearing. We want to make sure if there's anybody who wants any input, so we can make the changes. At that point there, we'll write up whatever the final piece is going to be. We'll print them out as soon as we can after the 21st. They'll be available in the town hall for handouts. We'll have a separate set of handouts for the sign bylaw, for the marijuana bylaw, and also for the TDR for people to have. So there'll be nothing in the town warrant to confuse you, saying, here's one thing, forget that, here's another thing. It's going to say right on the warrant. I believe Kelly's already figured out how she's going to do it. There'll be no explanation. It'll be C supplement. That's how we're gonna do it. Try to make this as clear as possible. The marijuana bylaw is done, has been done for a while. There's no change coming there. It's just you have to have a public hearing, and the way the law reads, the public hearing could be the day of town meeting. And it's happened before, but we just can't get any quicker because we have to post the hearing. You have to have so many days out front. And there's nothing I can do because we got this at the last minute. Again, we've picked up, from what should have been done months ago.
Mr. Hurd?
Yes, what is the downside of not voting on these articles at this town meeting?
Well, if you don't vote on the sign bylaw, then you just continue to have signs because we only have a one-page sign bylaw. So you get more of those signs out in Cranberry Highway that flash and lights and everything else. You don't have a standard sign. You'll have more of the banners all over the place, etc. The sign bylaw is basically tighten up all the laws, actually which is the building inspector in charge of actually being able to enforce, which we don't really have right now. The sign bylaw has been requested by 2 or 3 different boards of the town as far as, the entities, departments, etc. This is just basically to clean up the sign bylaw to cover all the different issues there. If you don't do anything with it, then it just continues the way it is. The TDR, if you don't do it, then you're taking possible potential development and putting it back more. As far as the marijuana clinic goes, we have 1 year in which to do something, assuming the Attorney General takes our moratorium that passed the town meeting and says it's okay, because they'll be reviewing that in November. They've got such a long line of moratoriums that they're way behind getting them done. They've already thrown out certain requirements of the moratorium, for some of the towns already. So in other words, the moratorium, the marijuana piece we're trying to get done now, just get it out of the way.
I thought we were on transfer development rights.
No, we've gone past.
Well,
Well, the general question was what
Do we
what was the
know
ben-
whether we have any applicants for marijuana
We don't have any because we can't take any.
in the town?
You can't take any because you have a moratorium.
Doesn't matter, we haven't even passed we're talking about the zoning, right?
Well, that's another piece of it, but the bottom line is you have none because there's a moratorium. The
Right.
19 that they've talked about in Plymouth County are not us.
All right, well, so where are we at? Do we want to vote on, Mrs. Donahue?
There's 2 separate issues here, Alan, and I appreciate you speaking in favor of them. One is the subject matter of these zoning articles, which is the transfer of development rights, which is I think, a hugely important thing for this town. I'm very in favor of the concept of it, which we see on the pretty colored map, which we can't get on TV, but it's a great idea. But you're asking me to vote on something that I don't know what the final finished product's going to be?
I'm not asking you to vote. If you noticed last night at the Board of Selectmen's meeting, I asked them not to vote.
Okay, so I just want to make that clear,
We're not
that I'm
looking
just,
for a vote tonight.
I don't think that we can vote on something that we don't know what it's going to be. We can be favorable if we go to the zoning hearing and we feel comfortable, we can stand up and speak at town meeting. But I'm not going to vote on something that we don't know what the final product is.
It's just my personal opinion, it's way out of my wheelhouse here. I understand the transfer of development rights. I understand the concept. I understand by the map what's happening, which leads to several more questions. But I don't feel comfortable voting on this one. I certainly don't. Let's just take them one at a time. I don't feel comfortable voting on 20. I don't know how everyone else feels.
I concur.
Well, I think we have. Okay, so should I entertain a? No.
No, we're just
I think
not
we're
doing
just gonna
anything.
we're gonna leave off on this one for now. And even next week, I'm gonna ask the question again. If everybody feels comfortable, then we will. But I'm not. No matter what, I'm not. I'm a finance guy. I'm just not understanding this one. So I will leave that one hold for now.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
You said that there's a hearing on the 21st. Which of these articles is directly being talked about on the 21st?
All 3 that I mentioned.
All 3 of
20,
these? 20, 21, and 20?
No, 20, 22, and 23.
Okay, let's try this, Alan. Article 20 is transfer development rights. Is that going to be covered on 21st?
Yes.
All right. Article 21 is amend the floodplain bylaw? No. Okay. Article 22 is establish zoning bylaws for the medical marijuana.
Yes.
All right, that's 2. Sign regulations?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And amend the zoning bylaws?
No.
Okay, so that's where, and then we got one more. Nope, that's it.
That's
So
it.
does everybody know which ones are going to be talked about now? It's 20?
You have the medical marijuana, and that basically is complete, and there shouldn't be any changes. Hopefully, everybody has read that since you've had it for a little while. The sign bylaw is complete. There may or may not be a change. You don't know till you have a hearing, but the concept and the basic outline is 99% there.
Well, what I gathered from the zoning bylaws was mostly they were going to establish the zone of where they're going to put the,
Medical marijuana is going to be institution is the location. Plus, there's other pieces to that if you read all of it.
okay.
You have to follow
Can I
the
make a
state rules.
suggestion?
Sure.
Well, we understand that transfer development rights, okay? I mean, I get the basic concept. I'm not an authority on it, obviously. I have a problem with the whole sign regulation. I did say this at the last meeting, that it says to replace this with this, and I have not seen a copy of this and this yet, so I can't tell you whether I would agree or I didn't.
You should have the final version
I
draft.
don't have the final version. I don't have that. I have this replacing lines, blah, 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 with lines, da, 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 da. I don't have the original, and I don't have the change.
I can't tell you.
Okay. I don't feel like, I get the opinion up here that people don't feel comfortable making a decision on any of three of these until after the 21st happens. So we're kind of beating our head up against the wall. I don't see us even getting a vote on any of them until everybody has the information. I personally won't be available on the 21st to go to that hearing.
Well, we're going to have to vote next week, so.
Well, we either need to decide to vote or decide to not vote due to the lack of
Let's do
information.
this. Let's go around the let's start with Mrs. Donahue. How do you feel? Should we vote on these articles, or should we just not vote?
I don't think we should vote on these
Okay,
articles.
Mrs. Cattouli.
I don't believe we should vote on these articles. We do have the option to take the vote prior to town meeting. After, if some of the associates here feel like they can get to this zoning hearing and better understand and make a decision, I think that would be the smart thing to do, but at this time, no, not before Pride.
That was a really long no.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Mr. Worthen, how do you feel? I'll take that as a no.
Yeah.
Mr. Hurd? And you probably understand these better than anybody sitting in this room.
I don't understand them well enough to vote.
Okay, I'll take that as a big no. Mrs. Fonts? You need to get used to that mic. Not that you use it very often, but just get used to it. Test it. Every now and then in the middle of the meeting, just go test.
It's a no, but I do plan to attend the meeting on the 21st.
Okay, and I'm not, Mrs. Jordan?
No.
Okay, so none of us are really comfortable, and again, I can go back to the old analogy that if I wanted to make this a financial issue, I probably could, but I wouldn't even know where to start making. I mean, I can come off the top of my head with that. So I don't think we're going to be voting on these articles at all, but we'll revisit it next week just to make sure. Well, do we want to vote on the amending the floodplain bylaw?
Yes.
Yes. Wait, Mrs. Want to go first?
Go ahead, no.
Tom raised his hand.
She's just going to make a motion.
I thought you were just asking, you know, I've
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion on Article 21.
I'll move favorable action on Article 21 to accept the amendment to the floodplain bylaw.
Second.
Okay, we got a first. Yes, for discussion, Mr. Worthing.
Before we vote, Alan, you said something about if we didn't do it, the town would revert to the current floodplain.
Well, two things happen. Either if we don't vote to accept the current ones, FEMA could decide not to have any coverage in the town of Wareham, which means everybody's flood insurance would be gone. And if you have a mortgage that requires flood insurance, you get a serious problem with your bank. Or you go back to the previous map, and the previous map, you might be in a max velocity flood zone, and your insurance could go up tenfold. So, simple as that.
It's going to go up tenfold anyway.
No, your insurance might go up tenfold if you're in the maximum area,
Yeah.
but it could be even worse for other people who really don't belong to that zone, which that other map did.
But the financial impact to the town,
What you're voting for is the maps. Unfortunately, you can't, this particular article, even though I voted no last night, we have no control over the financial impact. It's a bill passed by our wonderful representatives.
That's a Biggert Waters Act, correct?
That's the biggest one,
Okay.
and one of them's in California who has no clue. We're paying basically, so you understand, for all the things that happened with Katrina and everything else, plus we're paying for a huge bureaucracy known as FEMA, because that's how they're funding themselves. That said, if you have to have flood insurance when you have a mortgage, you have no choice, especially when you're a coastal community. So we don't have any say about the dollar amounts. They set it. We have no input. All this is to accept the maps of what the flood zone is. That's all it does. It has nothing to do with dollars and cents, even though there's a net effect to the actual user of the insurance.
But it will have a tremendous effect on property value.
Absolutely. But again, this is, you have to accept or reject the maps. Either way, it's going to have a negative effect.
I could make this, like I said, I can make this a financial article or not, but since we're going to vote on it, I mean, what we're voting on is accepting the modified.
The maps as supplied by FEMA.
Right, so that's what
That's it.
and that's really it. And then the rest of it we can argue or talk about another time. I don't think anybody on the table is going to argue because I think we all feel it's not a good idea with the other. So all those in favor of Article 21, amend the floodplain bylaws? Yes, Mr. Hurd.
Yes, Selectman Slavin, has any other town rejected
No.
these floodplain
No.
maps? Has any other town accepted them?
I don't know if they've done through. I have to go back and through. As far as for the information I have, nobody's basically, rejected the map simply because the net effect would be negative to them, because the maps have been corrected quite a bit. The maps as they were before would basically be more detrimental to the cities and towns than what they are now. They had more people, but I'm saying in a wrong flood zone plain, which would put them at a higher rate.
Okay.
The flood zone, the present, or the proposed flood zone maps are very dramatic in Wareham.
Yes, they are. You should have seen them before. They were worse. On Oak Street, we're at a high level. We were in the second level flood zone. Now we're in the white area, which is nothing with the new change,
And you're probably 50 feet above the water.
at least. I think Peter, my next door neighbor, basically is like 80 feet. So there were a lot of serious errors.
There are still a lot of serious
And
errors.
they're being challenged every day, and the lines are being
And
redrafted.
one of the people who wrote the bill is now talking about going back and repealing the bill.
Nevertheless, we still
But
have
that's the
to,
dollar bill part. That's not the map part.
we still have to vote. Let's go on with the vote. So all those in favor of Article 21, amend the floodplain bylaws, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
I'm opposed because
There's-
it's
all right, and those who abstain. So let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 0. Okay, and the other ones we're holding off for right now. Let's see, so that's all the articles that we have, and we'll
Wait a minute, wait a minute. We're holding off on 20, 22, and 23, but the zoning use tables are 24.
Is that going through?
I don't know whether that's going to get pulled or not. That's up to the chairman of the planning board, because he has to make sure. What those tables are, they went through and they're trying to clean up some Scribner errors in the tables and make sure they all comply with different zoning bylaws that have been passed over the last 15 years that may have not been updated properly. So all this table is just basically to update and correct. It's not making any changes or making any new rules or numbers. What normally happens, and it's a fault of the town, is that when we have articles at town meeting, they used to have someone who would come to the clerk's office and would go through all the articles that passed after the AG got done and make sure every one of those articles was then updated into the charter, into the bylaws, into the zoning bylaws. Well, they haven't done that in quite a while, and they're finding things that were passed, say, 7 years ago, were never updated. So that's what was happening here.
All right, so we're holding
I just can't give you an answer on that one because I don't know what's gonna come
All
forward.
right, well, we're holding 24. We'll make a decision next week. We don't know what's
Are
going to
you s-
happen.
It may
it's a
not
good
even need
chance
to,
it could be,
it may not even be an article. It doesn't have, if they're just correcting,
I
that's
think
an
because
internal
of changes,
process.
whatever it is, they claim that they had to bring it forth to the town to accept the changes. That's all. Even though they've been accepted before.
All right. Any other questions on the articles at this point? Do we have everything assigned? Do you have?
Can I get a pay raise?
Aye. All right, Mr. Hurd has number 1. Correct. All right. Marilyn Donahue has number 2. I have 3, 4, and 5, which I'll send you email tomorrow. I've got them. We're not taking any action on 6. Do we know? Number 8, number 9, and number 10 are Mrs. Donahue. Dominic is, Mr. Camerano's doing number 11. We don't need anything on 12. And 13 we're holding with the possibility of that not being there. 14 was not assigned, but that I'll take 14 when it comes to pass next week. 15 is, I'll take that one too. Mr. Hurd has 16, but we're going to change that, correct? Correct. All right, so we're good on that one. 17 is all on hold at this point. Who was going to do that one, 17?
There's nothing there.
No, we didn't talk
So
about
who would like to do 17? Who has an interest in talking about the,
How can we write a recommendation when there's no vote?
I said, when we get it done next week, we're going to have it written.
It's got to go through the CPC before we see it, right? Again?
It's got to go through the historical, I don't want to,
it. Historical.
commission. It's got to go through the historical commission, and they didn't have a quorum, so we may end up not having any vote at all on this. I will touch base with Mrs. Dunham.
Well, if it doesn't go through them, wouldn't we vote on the article as it,
Well,
was
that's
presented
an
to
option
us.
too. We can do that next week. So who would like to write? I mean, it's not going to be brain
I
rocket
can
science. Mr. Hurd takes that one. We voted on 18, which is the amend the waterways bylaw. Since I did the harbor master, I'll do number 18. We did not. We're holding 19, 20. We voted on 21. Does anybody want to write a quick blurb on that one?
I'll do that one.
Maryland, 21. For those of you getting off with not writing this time, just be prepared for spring. Your little hands are going to hurt. 22 we're holding. 23 we're holding. 24 we're holding. And 20, Bonnie, Mrs. Catulli, sorry, has already turned in, she's such a good student. She turned in her advice on 25 and 26, so we're good to go at this point. She gets what is it?
I get a little star.
Yeah, whatever she used to say.
This discussion here.
All right. Couple other things we need to cover. Okay, everybody pay attention so we can get out of here. When are we holding the public hearing? It looks like we're going to have to meet, however, briefly next week to cover some of these articles. I don't want it to be a long meeting. I certainly don't want to. I know this is a rough time. Don't look at me like that. We have to have everything turned into Mrs. Barrasso here on the 11th, so we have to meet next week to cover these articles. We have no choice. Anybody disagree with that? Oh, I'm looking
What
right
else?
at you.
All right, the ones that we still have questions on. Okay.
All right, so however brief, it's going to have to be next week. Then we have to meet on the 16th, correct?
Yes.
The 16th, we have to hold a public hearing. Now, past history tells you our public hearings last about 37 seconds. One for make a motion to open it and one to make a motion to close it. Unless somebody miraculously shows up, because they can hear us and they will, who knows, maybe someone will show up for a public hearing on the articles. We technically, no, never mind. Well, leave it at that. So on the 16th, we'll have a public hearing. I doubt we'll meet on the 23rd. Hopefully, the next time we'll meet after the 16th will be the night of town meeting at 6 p.m. We meet briefly before.
And then we'll have the zoning, the three zoning,
No, well,
or the three public hearing thing.
then we have to have a public hearing on the articles.
No, but, no.
Theirs is on the 21st, but to be honest with you, I'm still not sure, and after we talked about it a while earlier, we'll talk about it again next week. I'm not comfortable voting on them anyway unless I'm going to go to the zoning meetings, which I don't really have time to do at this point. So, you know, they're not looking for us to be zoning experts up here, I hope, because that's certainly not our charge. If anybody disagrees with me, please let me know, because I'm married. I'm used to being disagreed with on a daily basis. All right, so we know that, once again, we'll meet on the 16th, the 9th next week. We'll make sure everything is into Kelly by the 11th, right? All right, and on the 16th, we'll meet and have a public hearing. I'll see what else I can put in there if you want to stay. Maybe we'll bring some snacks and have a little after party or something. I know
Who pays
that.
some people to come in?
Huh?
Who pays some of the?
Well, we're not paying anybody to come
If you
in.
have food, they'll come anyway.
All right, so then we'll meet on the night of the 23rd. So what else do we have to cover?
What? We'll meet the night of what?
I'm sorry.
Why do we need to meet on
We'll
the
not
23rd?
meet on the
Not on the 23rd.
We'll not meet on the 23rd, and we'll meet again at 6 p.m. on the 28th. It is my hope and dream and vision that we can get through town meeting in one night.
Do we know when if Claire is having a pre-town meeting?
We do
And
not
if so,
know.
when? Okay.
We do not know if the town moderator is going to have a pre-town meeting because of some other prior commitments and things that are happening. If she does, I will attend, and I hope you'll attend. I think it's a good precursor to town meeting. So I encourage you to attend if she has it, but I don't see when she's going to be able to have it, given the discussion we had today. Yes.
Are there any articles on here that we should rehearse our verbal presentation on?
Well, maybe that's what we'll do on the night of the 16th. We'll do a little run through. Maybe that's what we'll do. We'll bring some
that's a good
food and
idea,
we'll do a
Tom.
little run through, party hats, the whole thing. So much as the questions, and I can certainly go out there and ask questions if you'd like, or because we're going to get some questions. But one of the things we try to do this year, which I think you'll see, is our advice should include certain things like where the money is coming from, where in the past that didn't have it, and that was always a question people ask us, where's the money coming from? Well, now we know where the money's coming from, and I think we've done a really good job getting the information, so now we just have to make sure it translates in our advice. There'll probably be some questions that we answer, some questions that Mr. Sullivan answers, but for the most part, I think we're going to be very prepared. I don't think we've discussed a couple of these articles to death. So we'll talk about it on the night of the 16th. We'll have a public hearing for 37 seconds, and then we'll sit back and maybe
Do our dress rehearsal.
do our dress rehearsal, I guess is what it is. The one thing we will be looking at is motions, and we should have a good feel for the motions. We should have the motions, most of the motions, not all of them, but the majority of the motions by the 16th. So Mrs. Catulli has graciously accepted the job of reading every motion. And we'll go over how we're going to handle town meeting, because I think for the most part we'll have one person reading the motion. When the town moderator asks for our vote, we'll give our vote, and then she will ask for our advice, and we will read our advice. We will not, unless it's a zoning article, which we don't have any advice. But other than that, we'll read our advice, and we'll break that down. So everybody will get a chance to read their own, well, not obviously, but we'll come up with something for you. We'll just do it on the 16th. Everybody okay with that? We'll just do it. It won't be a long meeting. We'll just go through a town meeting. You're looking really nervous over there, or looking at me
No,
like
I just think, I mean, I've seen us fumble the ball where we've gone
no doubt.
7 against and gotten blown out. And I would just make sure we want to make as good a case as we can for our positions.
I think if you go back through town meetings for the last maybe 2 years, for the majority of the time, people vote with the finance committee. Not all the time, you're right, and we have fumbled the ball, but that's one of the things that I think we discussed at the beginning when I decided to become the chairman, was that we were not going to be unprepared for town meeting. Our advice is going to be inclusive, and as you can see, with Mr. Sullivan, and I've asked the same thing of the school. When it's a money article, we need to know exactly where the money's coming from. That's important because people ask that question. They want to know, and if it's already in front of them, that just saves that question. Are we going to be prepared for every question? I certainly hope so, but just depends on who's deciding to come up there and ask the question. And maybe we aren't prepared, but if we're not, I believe Mr. Sullivan has the answers. We've worked very well with him, so I want us to come across really well at this meeting. So at this point, let's move on because I know everybody's tired. You guys are tired of hearing me anyway. I'm tired of hearing me. What's next? Remember, the important dates are October 9th. That's the last day for Finance Committee to vote, which we will do whatever we can on that date. And then we need to make sure that we get our advice to Mrs. Barrasso either electronically or by paper, by paper on the 9th, electronically on the 11th. I also will probably forward to you what I will call the preamble from the Finance Committee. I'll forward it to you, so if you have anything to add or say, I'll get that to you before the 9th so that we can discuss it on the 9th if you have any questions. Any new business? Any liaison reports? Yes, Mr. Worthing.
I've been, and I don't even know whether I should be able to get them, is to get the union contracts for the police and for the EMS.
Talking to your microphone.
I've been trying to get copies of the labor contracts for the police and for the EMS.
I'll see what I can.
Is it-
I'll talk to him. You have to, anything like that, you probably need to go to the chair because that's just the proper way to do that.
Okay,
All right.
sorry.
I'll see what I can do. I'll contact Mr. Sullivan and see what's going on. All right. Any other liaison reports? You got anything there, Mrs. Dunning?
No, I thought I was doing really well with my emails to the media, but they blew me off tonight. I'm guessing there's something better going on at school
You're
committee.
just going to have to accept the fact that we're boring.
Oh, well.
And I don't know how to
Send them
lighten
an
it
email,
up.
tell them what we're doing, and I give them a copy of the agenda. And then after the fact, I tell them what we did, and I give them a copy of the minutes. So
The school committee's having a meeting tonight.
That's
and
what I figured.
One of the
They're
things we
much
fight
sexier than we
is
are.
the school committee's a lot more, I guess, fun than we are. I don't know. I have Southern Charm. I try it all the time, but it just doesn't seem to work. I've asked them
just wait till we
personally.
have food.
They
They'll be
didn't know you were
swarming.
going to wear your Wildcat pink.
That's it.
All right. Well, we'll come up with something to get them back here. Any other liaison reports? All right. Approval of the minutes. I will accept a motion to approve the minutes of September 25th, 2013.
So moved.
I need a second.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain?
I wasn't here, damn it.
I don't think you were here, Mr.
I
Worthing.
wasn't here.
Yes, one
Sorry.
abstention.
All right, one abstention, so that's 6-0-1. Now, the next meeting is next week. Hopefully, we'll breeze through that one. And then we'll meet again on the 16th for the public hearing and food and run through. And then we're on our way to town meeting. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Any second? We're having a
Second.
real problem with seconds tonight. Usually people jump on seconds. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Anybody opposed to leaving? Okay. 7-0-0. Have a good night.